Welcome to Students Incorporated. I'm your host, Mr. Jason. Join me weekly as my students and I bring you content that's informative, positive, fun, and uplifting. This podcast is created and produced with the help of students from the International Community School of Bangkok. Imagine you're in a living room. You make a sarcastic comment, and then 50 invisible people burst out laughing. Congratulations, you're in a sitcom. Today we're breaking down the situation comedy, from 90s classics to modern mockumentaries. Joining me are co-hosts Esther and VJ, plus two student guests to help us dissect this cultural phenomenon called the sitcom. Then in segment 2, we'll continue our ongoing adventure, the mystery of St. Augustine. But first, let's hear our quote of the day and get some headline news.
Thank you for that introduction. Our quote of the day comes from the one and only Steve Martin, an American comedian, actor, and writer. He said, "Comedy is acting out optimism." Comedy often shows a positive or hopeful way of looking at life. In many sitcoms, characters deal with everyday problems, misunderstandings, or awkward situations. Instead of focusing on the negativity, the humor helps turn those moments into something funny and enjoyable, showing that difficult situations can still have a light side and be quite entertaining for the audience. And that's our quote of the day. Now on to some headline comedy news.
Our first headline comes from the United States. In a major move for network television, NBC has officially licensed the first season of its hit sitcom, Saint Denis Medical, to Netflix starting April 1st, 2026. This partnership aims to replicate the Netflix bump that turns shows like Suits into global sensations by bridging the gap between traditional broadcast and global streaming. The industry is finding new ways to ensure that modern comedies reach a massive worldwide audience while still airing on cable. Our next headline takes us to London. The BBC has announced radical reforms this week to transform into a more competitive global player, with industry insiders dubbing the new vision Britflix. By proposing a permanent charter and seeking an end to political appointments, the broadcaster aims to shore up its independence. This shift highlights a worldwide trend where legacy broadcasters are completely re-engineering their business models to survive in an era dominated by on-demand streaming and digital-first content. And finally, our last headline comes from Hollywood. In a massive shakeup for the streaming wars, industry leaders announced this week that Paramount Plus and Max are set to merge into a single, unified platform. This consolidation marks a turning point for the industry as major studios move away from individual apps and towards super services. This merger is expected to influence how sitcoms are produced, favoring large-scale, high-budget libraries that can satisfy a massive global subscriber base.
All right, team, let's get into the situation. Today we're talking sitcoms. Now, most people think a sitcom is just any funny show, but that's not quite right. A stand-up comedy show special is funny, but it's not a sitcom. So I'll open the floor to our co-host. What actually makes a sitcom and not just a 30-minute comedy show? Go ahead, Esther, you go first.
It's all in the name. The actual word sitcom is short for situation comedy. The comedy comes specifically from the situation the characters are trapped in. In a movie, characters usually go on a journey and then change. In a sitcom, they're kind of just stuck.
Exactly. Whether it's a boring office, a dysfunctional family dinner, or a coffee shop, the situation is the container for the characters. You drop a group of mismatched people into that container, shake it up, and wait for the sparks to fly.
Sparks. Very good point, VJ. I like that analogy, that the situation is the container. Let's bring in our student guest now. When you think of a sitcom world or setting, what's the first place that comes to mind? What do you think, Highlight?
Yep, Mr. Jason. For me, it's definitely a school setting. There's something about that world that I think we all can relate to. The hallway, the bell, and the cafeteria. You're in an environment with a lot of different personalities. Some you get along with and some you don't. That's a perfect situation for drama and jokes.
Wow, I definitely agree with you. I think another common setting is a house and its living room or dining room. Like in the classic American sitcoms, Full House or The Fresh Prince, it's that one place where everyone gathers. It feels like you're a part of the family just by watching them interact in their home.
That's a great point. Most sitcoms are built around a home base, a familiar set like a living room or a specific workplace, where the audience feel like they belong, like they are part of the setting. Even when the characters have a crazy day, you know they're always going to end up back in the same setting by the end of the episode.
Yeah, like the couch in the sitcom Friends. There are actually two couches. The one in the coffee shop Central Perk, and the one in Monica and Rachel's apartment. The couches seem to always ground the scene.
Or an office. Or a break room in the sitcom, The Office. These shared spaces, which brought all these characters together, became the place where all the drama and conversations happened.
And that leads to a big question. Why do we find so much comfort in these characters? Think about it. In most sitcoms, the characters never truly learn their lesson. They make the same mistakes every week. Why do we keep watching it?
I think it's because it's actually more like real life than we realize. In real life, change takes time. We still forget things, we still say the wrong things sometimes, and we definitely still procrastinate on our homework. Watching a sitcom character make the same silly mistakes every week makes us feel better about our own, I guess. It's like the show is saying, it's okay to still be figuring things out.
That's a great way to put it, Highlight. It's the comfort of the familiar mistake.
Exactly. Plus, there's no such thing as a game over. In a sitcom, if you accidentally ruin a birthday cake or get stuck in a locked closet, you know it's going to be okay by the end of the episode. No matter how much of a mess they make, they'll be back in that same kitchen or classroom next week. It's like a reset button. It gives us a break from the high stakes of the real world. In a sitcom, the world always fixes itself in 22 minutes.
All right, we love it because it's predictable then, and things stay the same. Now let's get into the actual architecture of a sitcom. We have our two student guests, Highlight and Pun, here to help us design a brand new show and the setting, our very own school right here in Bangkok.
This is a goldmine for design. You've got students from all over the world. The heat, the uniforms. It's a specific setting. But first, we need to choose a formula. Esther, what are the options?
Well, we do go multicam, like the stage play with a laugh track, or single cam, which feels more like a movie or documentary.
I think for an international school, single cam is the way to go. You could do a mockumentary style, like The Office. Imagine the camera zooming in on a student's face when the AC breaks down in the middle of May in Bangkok.
I very much agree with you. Plus, with single cam, we can show the situation better, like the chaos of the lunch line or the madness of the car drop-off in the morning.
Yeah, I think those are great choices. So we've got a single cam mockumentary. Now let's talk design elements. How do we represent the K through 12 aspect? That's a huge range of ages.
Definitely, Mr. Jason. That's the engine of the show. You have the seniors who think they run the school, but then you have the first graders who are accidentally creating funny chaos on the playground or in the shared spaces. The conflict is built in because everyone is sharing the same space but living in different worlds.
And what about the Bangkok factor? How does the city influence the design of the show?
Well, I think it's the character itself. The inciting incidents for almost every episode could be the challenges of the city. The episode where the field trip bus never left the soy, or an episode where a monsoon turns the football field into a swimming pool.
I love it. So the structure would be this, the setup. A typical hot day at school. The conflict, senior carnival is happening, but the typical storm just rolled in and threatens to flood out all the outdoor games and vendors. And the seniors won't be able to go on a senior trip without the money raised for carnival. The resolution would be the seniors with help from friends. The resolution would be the seniors with help from friends from lower classes help move all the games and food into the large gym area, helping to save the event.
That is a classic and simple sitcom blueprint. You've got the situation and the resolution, and the comedy happens throughout the problem and the solution.
It's all about the reset too. No matter how big the disaster at the festival is, by next Monday morning, everyone is back in uniform, back in class, and back to doing homework.
Okay, that is exactly right. So we've designed the show and we've learned the formulas. Now for the grand finale of this segment, the top 10 list. If you want to create a sitcom, you have to watch The Masters. Here's our top 10 list of some of the best sitcoms of all time. I'll start off at number 10 with I Love Lucy. If you want to understand the situation, Start here. It's the blueprint for every mismatched comedy that followed.
At number 9, I'm putting the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It is the perfect example of the fish out of water trope, dropping somebody into a world where they don't belong.
For number 8, I have to go with The Office. It's the king of single cam mockumentary. It proved that you don't need a laugh track to be hilarious. Sometimes just look at the camera is enough.
At number 7, I'm choosing Abbott Elementary. It is a modern masterpiece, since we're talking about school sitcoms. This is the one to study for how to make teachers and students relatable.
Great picks. And for number 6, I'm adding Seinfeld, a classic, the show about virtually nothing. It taught us that the A story and B story can be completely trivial, like waiting for a table at a Chinese restaurant and still be genius.
Number 5, we have Friends. It's the ultimate ensemble show. It proved that the situation doesn't have to be a job or a family. It can just be the people you choose to spend your time with.
Number 4, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It shows how to do joke-dense writing. The rule of 3 and the button are used perfectly in every single scene.
Number 3, Modern Family. It mastered the intertwined plot. You have 3 different families whose stories all crash together at the very end of the episode.
Number 2, The Simpsons. Even though it's animated, it is the longest running sitcom for a reason. It can parody anything and everything while keeping the family at the center.
And finally, number 1, whether it's your favorite or just the most influential, we have to mention Cheers. It's the gold standard for character-driven comedy, a place where everybody knows your name. That's what every sitcom creator wants to build, a place where the audience feels like they belong. Now, before we wrap up and head into part 6 of our adventure story, we have one final message, so don't go away. We'll be right back.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey everyone! Well, we've had a lot of fun today talking about fake products and sitcom tropes. Here's something real. Creative writing and the arts are the heartbeat of schools, whether it's drama, film, or music, or producing a podcast as we do. These programs help find our voices and teach us a lot about ourselves and the world. Support local arts programs because the next great showrunner might be standing right next to you in that lunch line. Go Arts!
And we are back. For this segment, we'll bring you part 6 of our 10-part adventure story titled The Mystery of St. Augustine. But before we jump into part 6, here's a brief recap of part 5.
At the Cathedral Basilica, the El Dorado team uncovered Twin Burden's etchings, confirming a radical theory: Sir Francis Drake lost a second, undocumented ghost ship, laden with illegal plunder. By linking these carvings with other evidence, the search has shifted towards familiar landmarks. Now guided by Cece's local ties, the team has ventured onto the secluded Dickerson estate to find a hidden map etched into the landscape. However, the table is already closing in. While surveying the wealthy Eleanor Bennett, the chair successfully captured evidence of her direct involvement with Iro. After the lethal encounter at the restaurant, it has become clear that the table will stop at nothing to accomplish their mission. As the two worlds prepare to collide, the search for history and treasure has officially turned into a fight for survival. And now, without further ado, here's part 6, titled The Dinner.
After parking their cars in an overgrown grassy section near a shed, the research team, all 6 members, followed little Riley around the side of a dilapidated old house and then down a long, narrow dirt path that disappeared into the back of the property. The path was overgrown with weeds, creating a wall of green on either side. Hawthorne noticed Cece talking and asking Riley questions. Who was leading the human walking train? James couldn't hear exactly what was being said, but it seemed like Riley was essentially in charge of the entire property and was also trying to take care of his great-grandma. The group walked for what seemed like 10 to 15 minutes when the path took a bend to the right and then opened into a clearing. There in the center of the clearing sat several small hills and rock formations. The 6 adults looked down at Riley, waiting for him to give them some instructions.
Riley smiled at the group and then said, Great Grandma Dee said y'all wanted to poke around out here. I know these hills and rocks like the back of my hand. It's been my playground, well, since my parents went to jail. So what do you want to see?
Anne leaned over to James and said, I like this kid. I feel bad he's having to grow up like this.
Cece was the first to answer Riley's question, and not wanting one of the others to come across too forward. She then said, We want to see the old etchings and pictographs in the rocks. We are here conducting some research with visitors from out of state.
Okay, follow me, Riley said, as he motions for the 6 adults to follow him toward the inner rock face wall that was situated between 2 of the hills.
Tom was feeling quite excited about being there in person, on the property. He'd only ever seen old photos of some of the ancient etchings, but knew there had to be more. Seeing something like this in person helped bring history alive for Tom, and he assumed others felt this as well. Wow, these are wonderful, Tom explained as he scanned the old etchings in the coquina walls.
Amanda then asked, Tom, what are we looking at here? I'm not familiar with this style.
These etchings and pictographs are from the Native American people group called the Timucua. It's thought that they would take shelter here, among these hills and rock caves during bad storms and floodings. As you can see, a significant portion of this land is marshy. This is really the only high point around for several square acres, Tom replied.
Riley, who was sitting above a small rock ledge watching and listening, then said, On a clear day, you can see the ocean from the top of the tall hill over there.
Amanda, after directing Olivia on what photographs to take, then asked, Hey Riley, are there any other etchings or pictographs you can show us?
Yeah, Riley replied, but they're over by the big hill. I'll show you if you want to see them.
Yes, thank you, Amanda replied. You lead the way. The 6 adults watched as Riley climbed down from the rock ledge where he had been sitting and then followed him over to the largest hill, which was located 40 to 50 yards away from the main sections. Amanda noticed that the backside of the largest hill was mostly rock, while the front side held more earth and dirt. Riley led the group around the backside of the hill and then to a small opening that led into a narrow chasm in the rock. It was similar to a cave in that you could enter a space within the rock, but there were still small holes and areas on the walls and ceiling that were open to daylight.
The last of the old carvings are in there, Riley said as he pointed into the small cave opening. I don't like going in there. Pit vipers like hanging out in these parts. I'm waiting out here.
Amanda and Tom entered first, cautiously, while the others waited outside. The space was not large enough to accommodate all 6 adults. Amanda observed numerous small cracks and crevices that could conceal any number of venomous eastern diamondback rattlesnakes, also known as pit vipers. Thankfully, the small creatures usually warn unsuspecting outsiders by rattling. However, the space was quiet. After a few nervous minutes, Amanda and Tom returned with smiles on their faces.
By the looks on your faces, I say you found something, Hawthorne said.
Go see for yourself, Professor. You're definitely going to want to see it in person, Amanda replied.
One by one, James, Anne, Olivia, and Cece all entered the cave and then came back. As they were now standing at the entrance of the cave looking at each other, Hawthorne could be heard saying, Well, isn't that just something? James looked over at Riley and then said, Thanks, kid. You've just made our day. I think it's time we hike up this hill and take a look toward the ocean. And with that, the group hiked up to the top of the hill and looked east toward the ocean. And what do you know? The kid was correct. Off in the distance was the Atlantic Ocean, along with a small natural landmark. The landmark was a distinct shape and sat adjacent to the shoreline. The Timucua Native Americans did not make the etchings they had all seen inside the small cave. It was different. The etching featured a large hill-like shape at the bottom, followed by a straight line that connected to another distinct shape, identical to the natural landmark visible in the distance. From that shape, another line then ran vertically upward and connected to a square shape. Above the square shape was a broken cross, and above that broken cross etching was a circle with radial, thin lines protruding outward, like spokes around the circle.
Amanda, who was standing next to Professor Hawthorne at the top of the hill, turned and said, Well, Professor, I think we've discovered the location of one of the shipwrecks.
One of the shipwrecks? Tom then asked as he overheard Amanda's comment.
Yep, Tom, you heard that correctly. Shipwrecks with an S, James replied.
So, I take it that etching in the cave below is a directional map pointing out towards the ocean?
If what we saw in the cave is correct, the circle at the top represents the sun. The broken cross shape actually represents the ship's mast. The square must represent something the ship was carrying. The odd-looking shape below that must represent the landmark we can see off in the distance from here. And we are standing on the large shape at the bottom of the etching, the tall hill, Amanda said rather quickly with excitement in her voice.
Riley, listening to the group talking, then said, I wonder why those carvings were different from the others.
That carving in the rock face is what we call line of sight map. You have to be standing right where we're standing to understand where it points to. It's simple but effective. It's similar to our wayfinding markers we use today in our national parks. Hey Riley, James said, just out of curiosity, have you shown that line of sight map to anyone else recently?
Yeah, it's a weird week. You guys are the second group I brought out here. You guys are a lot nicer, though, but the other group paid me.
Tom looked at Amanda and James with raised eyebrows, then said, What do you think, James?
Well, that's a peculiar thing that adds a new dynamic to our research, James replied, and then said, Riley, how many people were in that last group that was here?
3 guys and 1 lady. I showed them exactly what I showed you, Riley answered.
Chair 2 called Chair 1 on the secure laptop from the condo. It rang for what seemed like 5 minutes. Finally, there was a click, and then the familiar low and straightforward voice.
This must be important since you're contacting me, Chair 1 said. What is it?
Ah, yes, sir. Chair 2 replied as she motioned with her hands at Chair 6 to lower the volume of the TV. Chairs 3, 4, and 5 were successful and are on their way back here now. Midnight then continued. The documents are authentic, and we have some intel on Miss Bennett. I thought it was important enough to let you know. I have audio and video of her passing around one of the gold coins we discovered to several individuals during a dinner party last evening. We don't know who these people are.
Interesting, Chair 1 replied. Could be IRO officials. I assume the runner I sent the other day handed over the strong box of coins to Miss Bennett. Those coins were high on the red list, First Chair replied. Send me what you have, and I'll look into it. Chair 1 then asked, What else?
6 followed that out-of-town research group, and well, they spent some time inside the old church. Do you want us to look into it? Chair 2 asked.
There was silence for a moment, then Chair 1 replied. 6, take 5 and 4 and go search the basilica this evening after it closes. I want to know what they're doing at the church. I have a weird feeling they may know something we don't. He then continued, Midnight, you and 3 be on call in case they need support. Chair 1 then paused for a moment and took a deep breath that could be heard over the laptop. This entire operation is important. Iroh's contact from England was correct about the location of the wayfinding map, pointing to the location of the captain's car. The documents, now confirmed as authentic, need to be studied for any more clues we may have missed. We need to know the exact location where the ship went down, so it's time to move on to the next phase. But before we do that, is there anything else I should know about?
Chair 3 did mention in their text message that there was a small issue last evening and that they took care of it, Midnight answered.
Small issue? 1 then responded. The dinner party Eleanor attended last night was held at a restaurant named Deep Blue?
Yes, that's correct, Midnight replied.
I know it's correct because I watched the news this morning, 1 said with a sharp rebuke. One of the restaurant's evening chefs was reported missing this morning. Staff members alerted police late last night. You do realize this is one of Jacksonville's most high-end restaurants, and the guy who went missing was not just some evening chef. He was an award-winning celebrity chef who had his own online TV show. This small issue is not small at all. When someone like that disappears, people start asking questions.
Midnight did not know what to say. She noticed that 6 had turned off the TV and was staring over at her from the couch with a worried face. 2 then cleared her throat and then responded, How would you like us to proceed?
Chair 1 immediately responded and said, The team has crossed a line I was hoping not to cross on this operation. However, this type of thing is not new to us. He then continued, Confirm with 3, 4, and 5 that nothing from the restaurant incident leads back to them or us. Make sure the CCTV footage gets scrubbed. Use our guy in Russia if you need to. Also, if another incident happens, make sure all disposal protocols are followed, which I assume the other chairs followed last night. You can't have a murder without a body. Chair 1 then ended the call by saying, "Make it so, Midnight, don't screw this up." The call then ended abruptly.
Chair 2 then turned to Chair 6. You heard Chair 1. See what you can find about at the old church.
After leaving Mrs. Dickerson's property and traveling east toward the coastline, the two vehicles reached a small gravel pull-off. The coastline was hazy, and the Atlantic Ocean looked like a churning gray soup with its incoming and outgoing surf. James, Anne, Amanda, Olivia, Tom, and Cece trekked through small sandy dunes toward the jagged coquino rock landmark that they had seen at a distance from the property just 30 minutes earlier. The ocean and narrow sandy beach were still about 50 yards due east. "Wait," James said. "Nobody move. Look over there." He said this while pointing to a large, disturbed, deep divot in the sandy dune area right next to where they had stopped.
What is it? Asked Anne.
Something different about that spot as compared to the surrounding ground. The sand is disturbed, and it looks like someone dug a large pit and then partially filled it in. There are a lot of footprints in the sand as well, James replied.
Yeah, I see it, Anne said.
Someone's been out here digging, and recently, Tom added.
As the team surrounded the half-filled, large sandy pit, Amanda then said, "Well, I think that the other group got here first and dug something up."
Well, that's illegal since we're on state park land, Tom added.
I need to call Dr. Conrad and give him an update. And it would be nice to know what was found here, unless, Hawthorne paused.
Unless what? Amanda asked.
Unless they found the location of the lost captain's kaha, that strong box with the 20-some gold coins you were talking about earlier. Remember the square shape in the map? That could have represented the gold coin box. And you had mentioned that survivors from a shipwreck made it to shore, Hawthorne added as he kicked around the sand at the bottom of his feet.
Yes, this is a possibility, Amanda replied, her voice filled with excitement.
If this is true, and if that old line of sight map in the cave is accurate, then we need to get a boat out in the water and conduct a quick search directly east of this spot tomorrow morning, as the sun peeks over the eastern horizon, Tom then said.
Bobby down at the marina did say to give him a call if we need anything else, Hawthorne added.
Yeah, I can get that set up. I can go out with Bobby early tomorrow morning. We don't all need to go. We can set up a search grid over yonder. Tom points out to the open ocean just east of where they are standing. He's got a high-tech sonar system he uses for fishing. I think it could at least detect any ocean floor anomalies that have been overlooked in the past or not searched at all. It could give us a good picture of the underwater terrain. At least, now we know where to search. I think that's 90% of the problem before. People just did not know where to look. Tom punched in their location into his GPS phone app, making sure he dropped a pin identifying the illegal dig site they were standing next to. I'll send volunteers out here tomorrow to dig out this hole again and see if there's anything in it. We can give a report to Eleanor at the ponds tonight at dinner. I forgot to tell you, she's going to join us in person. She said she's got something she wants to show us as well.
Chair 6 parked the car 1 block away from the old church building. The church officially closes at 5 p.m. each day, but the table members wanted to wait until it was dark before trying to enter. They also wanted to make sure that the caretaker had already left for the night, so the three of them, Chair 6, 5, and 4, sat waiting in the car.
We've been sitting here a while. What do you think? Are we good to go yet? Chair 4 asked.
Yeah, let's get this over with, Chair 5 then mumbled.
It's just past 7. We should be good, 6 replied. I'll wait out here as we planned. Go in through the back entrance under the cover of darkness. We need to know what that research team was doing here for so long. We've got 10 to 15 minutes max. And with that, 6 watched Chair 4 and 5 walked away quietly down the block and then disappeared down a small side street next to the church.
Chair 4 easily picked the old lock on the back door of the church. The old basilica, like many these days, does not have a high-tech security system. A simple lock and deadbolt are often all that is used to keep the door secure. All right, we're in, 4 said quietly to 5 as he opened the door slowly and quietly. As the two entered the back door of the church, they found themselves in a small room. The room was mostly empty except for 2 stacks of folding chairs leaned up against the wall and a few narrow tables that held miscellaneous items that are typically found in a church. A random old newsletter, pens, decorations, and so forth. Nothing significant.
Let's head out into the main area and look around. There's nothing in here of importance, 5 whispered to 4 as he pointed toward the open door that led out into the main part of the church. Both 5 and 4 knew from their experience that keeping a low profile while breaking and entering was what separated the professionals from the amateurs. More often than not, petty criminals were caught simply by not following this basic code of conduct. Don't make noise and conceal your light if you need to use one.
As 5 and 4 quietly moved from the small back room and out into the large nave of the church, they noticed that there was one single overhead light above the main platform at the front of the church, where the altar and statue of Jesus were located. They both stopped and then scanned the other parts of the nave to see if they saw any movement or heard any noise. Nothing. 4 then motioned to 5 to split up so that they could approach the front platform from the right and left side aisles.
Chair 5 approached from the left side aisle, while Chair 4 was approaching from the right side aisle. Both were very curious and very cautious. As they were about to step onto the first step of the platform, they saw a flash of light projected upward from behind the altar. 5 knew immediately that this was a camera flash. However, there was no one standing behind the altar. It didn't make any sense. 5 pulled out his small taser and then motioned at 4 to walk slowly to the back of the altar together to see where the light came from.
As they slowly and quietly made their way to the back of the altar, they noticed the rug had been moved back and an old wooden door was propped open, which led down into a room under the floor. They stood there, flanking the entrance, just looking down into the small room. They could tell that someone was down there, but just out of sight. All of a sudden, they heard a muffled cell phone ring. It came from inside the room in the floor. 4 and 5 stood there frozen, waiting and thinking of what to do next.
Sarah's phone rang loudly and startled her. She looked at the screen and saw that it was Tom calling. Sarah was happy that Tom had arranged with John to let her into the church after hours. She knew the floor vault was something the Historical Society would enjoy studying and documenting. Hi, Tom, Sarah said as she spoke into her phone. What's up? She stood listening to Tom and then said, Yeah, I'll meet you all over at the ponds once I'm done here. See you all soon. With that, she then ended the call.
Chair 5, after hearing the lady speak into the phone, looked over at 4 and raised his hands as if to gesture. What do we do now? As 5 was gesturing with his hands, he shifted his stance and a loose floorboard he was standing on creaked loudly beneath his feet.
Sarah, startled by the noise coming from above her, called out, John, is that you?
4 looked at 5 and then motioned with his hands to step backwards. As they both were about to step back from the floor opening, 4 glanced down, and there, standing at the base of the old wooden stairs, stood a lady staring back up at him with a very surprised and worried look on her face. Not saying a word, Chair 4 looked at 5, nodded his head downward, and then exhaled very loudly and shook his head.
5, without hesitation, jumped straight down into the open vault room, landing on his feet, right in front of the startled lady. He raised his taser and lunged forward.
4 could hear the electric buzz of the taser as he scanned the main nave area, making sure they were still alone. He waited what seemed like forever and then saw 5 ascend back up the wooden stairs, holding the lady's cell phone in his hand. Turn it off and keep it. We might need it later, 4 said to 5.
5 pressed firmly on the side power button and watched as the phone screen went black. He then pried open the back of the phone and pulled out the SIM card. Alright, give me a minute, 5 replied, while trying to regain his composure. He also had 2 deep scratches across the side of his face, with a narrow stream of blood running down onto the collar of his shirt.
You're bleeding, 4 said with no emotion, then asked, What about her?
We follow disposal protocols, 5 replied, and then said, I'm going to need your help getting her up and out of there. At that moment, the headlights from a car shone through one of the side windows of the basilica and lit up the opposite side wall of the nave. Then they heard the car door open and close.
4 reached back and turned off the small overhead light that was still on, and then whispered, Quickly, lower the wooden door, latch it, and put the rug back. They both then left out the same door in the small back room they had entered.
Five could be heard swearing under his breath as they walked back to where chair 6 was still waiting in the car a block away. That did not go as planned, Five said to both 4 and 6 as they got in the car. Just drive, Five then said to 6.
Hawthorne found Dr. Conrad's contact info on his phone and then clicked the call button. James waited in the main lobby area of the Ponce while the others went in and were seated at the table he had reserved the day before. James heard a familiar voice come through his phone.
Dr. Conrad saw an unfamiliar phone number show up on his personal cell phone screen, but he recognized that the area code was from his county. He almost ignored it, but then decided to answer since most calls he gets this late at night usually mean there's a problem. "Hello?" Conrad said with some hesitancy.
Dr. Conrad, James answered and then said, "James Hawthorne here, calling from Florida. So sorry I know it's late for you, but I wanted to give you a quick update on our progress out here, if you have a minute."
Yeah, it is a bit late here, so it's what, 8 p.m. there, is that right? Conrad replied.
"That's correct," James answered. "Again, I apologize for the late hour on your side, but I thought our news was worth sharing with you before tomorrow, as I'm not sure I'll have a chance to give you a call tomorrow."
"That's okay," Conrad replied. "I haven't gone to bed just yet. Please go on."
To make this short, we had a couple of snags the first day or two, but after following a few leads and then discovering new clues and a literal map, we believe we have a location where one of Drake's ships sank. Tomorrow, your friend Tom will be trying to confirm it, Hawthorne responded.
"Wow, that's pretty incredible," Dr. Conrad then said. "You all haven't even been there a week yet, and you think you may have found a location of the sunken ship?"
Yes, and well, we actually believe there are 2 sunken ships, and we are unsure where the second ship could be located. Amanda gets all the credit for this potential discovery. Anyway, we'll keep you posted as to progress on this front as well, Hawthorne then said. "Oh yeah, the El Dorado team is about to meet Eleanor Bennett. She's helping finance the operation. I guess this is where our funding is coming from."
I'm glad you called me tonight. This is pretty big news. So, the possibility of 2 shipwrecks? Dr. Conrad then added. "And let me know what you find out about this person who's helping fund this endeavor. This Eleanor must be giving through the Historical Society, since it's set up as a not-for-profit, and I haven't heard her name before."
"Yeah, I suppose so," Hawthorne replied. "I don't know much about her except that she comes from a wealthy British family. Not sure what the connection is yet, but we'll try to find out. And one more thing, we believe there's another team here looking for the same thing we are. We don't know who it is or who they are, but we'll keep trying to find out if it's true."
Okay, lots of information. You are right, and I'm glad your team is there to assist Tom. I'll sign off now. Keep me posted as things progress. I'm quite curious now. As I said to you before you left, this seemed different than just a simple research trip. Okay? Take care. And with that, Dr. Conrad ended the call.
Hawthorne walked into the restaurant and then followed one of the wait staff to the group's table. Everyone was ready there, seated, looking at the evening's food options and chatting. James glanced around the table as he was sitting down. Anne was seated next to him, then Amanda, Olivia, Tom, Cece, and an empty chair reserved for Sarah, and finally Eleanor. After a few quick exchanges of pleasantries, Tom and Cece called over the waiter and put in the group's order.
Eleanor looked over at Tom and Cece and then said, "Oh, Tom, that sounds delicious. Good choices for tonight's dinner." Looking at the empty chair between her and Cece, she then asked, "Are we expecting someone else tonight?"
Yes, Tom replied. Sarah should be joining us shortly.
"Splendid," Eleanor replied and then said, "Not trying to start our evening on a downer, but did you see the news about our favorite celebrity chef up in Jacksonville?"
No, we hadn't, Tom answered. You mean Chef Lorenzo at the Deep Blue?
"Yes, he's missing," Eleanor added. "The interesting thing is that I was dining there the night he supposedly went missing. Anyway, we are hoping it is all just a misunderstanding."
That is big news and interesting, Tom replied.
As the table listened to Eleanor talk about some of the news reports regarding the missing celebrity chef, Cece looked down at her watch and noticed that it was already past 8:30 p.m. Cece then leaned over towards Tom and said, "This isn't like Sarah being late. I know she wanted to meet Eleanor in person and wouldn't skip out on this dinner together unless there was some kind of emergency."
Yeah, you're probably right, Tom replied. Why don't you step out and try to give her a call?
Cece excused herself from the table and made her way towards the coat room and restroom area towards the front of the restaurant. She then dialed Sarah's cell number, knowing that Sarah prefers to talk on the phone rather than texting. The phone rang once, and then Cece heard the following message. "Welcome to North Shore Cellular. Your call cannot be completed as dialed. The phone number is not available." Cece tried a few more times. She even tried to send a text, which bounced back. She then called the Historical Society's office phone, thinking maybe Sarah had turned off her phone by accident and was back at the office. None of it seemed normal behavior by Sarah. Cece knew Sarah to always be on time or early, and Sarah was always reachable. Cece walked back into the restaurant and then sat back down at the group's table just as some appetizers were being served.
Eleanor picked up on it right away, noticed Cece's worried face expression, and asked, "Something wrong, sweetie?"
"I hope not," Cece replied. "It's not like Sarah to be late. I'm sure it's nothing."
I'm sure there's a good reason, Tom said with a reassuring voice. I'm sure she'll be coming along shortly. Tom, wanting to change the subject so as not to keep speculating about Sarah's whereabouts, then asked Eleanor. "So, Eleanor, it's good to be able to meet in person, and we thank you for your support of the St. Augustine Historical Society. With your continued support over the past year, we were able to bring on Cece full-time, and, on top of that, work with James Hawthorne and his team on this new research project we've made some headway on. But first, we understand you wanted to show us something?"
"Oh, Tom, yes, of course," Eleanor replied and then continued. "I'm excited to hear about your progress, as I'm sure you will be able to fill in some of the missing details. I do have something to show you this evening, as I mentioned." Eleanor proceeded to pull a small white cloth out of her handbag and place it on the table in front of her. All eyes at the table were watching her and what she was about to unveil. She looked up and smiled, and then opened the cloth to reveal a single gold coin.
Hawthorne, taken aback by the mint condition of the old coin and the inscription on the face, looked over at Amanda and then back at Anne with a smile and then said quietly, "What was once lost has now been found. Amazing."
Staring at the gold coin now sitting on the black tablecloth, Professor Amanda looks directly at Eleanor and asks, "Is that what I think it is?"
Eleanor smiles and then answers the question with a question. "Well, why don't you tell me what you think it is?"
"All right. I like this game," Amanda responds and then says, "That coin is from the captain's kaha or strongbox, the strongbox that Drake's treasurer was entrusted with. The same strongbox that was buried by several survivors when one of Drake's ships sank," Amanda continued. "And there are 22 other identical coins that match it, right?"
Right as Amanda had mentioned the 22 coins, James glanced over at her, as he knew Amanda did not make a mistake about the quantity of coins she had just mentioned. He knew what she was doing. She was fishing for information, a confirmation.
"Actually, there are 23 other coins just like this one, not 22. I had originally thought the total was going to be 23 coins, not 24. Eleanor paused for a moment and then added, "It seems like one of Drake's captains was going to receive a double bonus, which goes against British maritime customs back then."
Hawthorne, who had been mostly quiet during the conversation, then asked, "If you don't mind me asking, how did you go about finding the captain's lost kaha? I mean, people have been looking for centuries for that. I'm sure it wasn't easy."
"I assume you've heard of Iro," Eleanor then asked.
"Yes, I have, but I was unaware that they were still in the business of recovery. I was under the impression they solely focused on museum curation these days," Hawthorne replied. By this time, everyone at the table was listening, and the entrees were being served.
"Iro does both. Publicly, they are known for the partnership with museums around the world, but privately they are still in the recovery business, which is how I was able to obtain the lost coins."
Please continue, Hawthorne said.
Let me restate that. My family hired Iro several months ago with the sole purpose of finding the lost Drake shipwreck that has eluded for hundreds of years. I thought it was impossible and a complete waste of money and time until a delivery guy showed up at my doorstep and handed me a heavy package containing a Captain Strong box with all its coins. Iro reps also sent me a message asking to meet in person. Eleanor paused for a moment, looked past Hawthorne and Anne out of the window and into the night, and then added, "We met at the Deep Blue restaurant in Jacksonville the other night, which is where Chef Lorenzo works."
And you think these two things are connected? Hawthorne pressed.
Honestly, I have no idea. However, it seems like an odd coincidence. Eleanor replied, "Famous chefs don't just disappear in Jacksonville."
At that moment, almost on cue, Tom's phone rings. Its loud ring interrupts the conversation and distracts everyone at the table. Tom, feeling a little embarrassed for not having switched his phone to silent, apologizes to everyone at the table and removes it from his inside jacket pocket, looking at the caller ID. "I need to take this. Keep eating and talking. I'll be right back," Tom said as he excused himself from the table and walked toward the coat room at the front of the restaurant. "Hello, John." Tom answered his phone.
Tom, sorry for calling so late, John said.
"No problem. Go on," Tom answered.
I was preparing to load up a few chairs into my car from the church this evening. We have an early morning event tomorrow, so I thought I would load my car tonight. Anyway, I went inside thinking Sarah might still be in there because her car is still parked outside. Well, there were no lights on, and it was completely dark, John continued. I checked the different areas of the church and then walked up onto the platform, and that's where I found it.
"Found what?" Tom replied.
"Well, I found a SIM card, just lying on the floor," John answered. "My only thought is that maybe it belongs to Sarah, since she was the person here and the only person there's been inside the church today, beside me," he continued. "But why would she remove the SIM? And why would she leave her car here? Doesn't make sense."
"You're right, John. It doesn't make sense. Hang up with me and call Lieutenant Walsh," Tom replied and then said, "We'll be right over."
A huge thank you to my co-host and student guest for helping us crack the code on sitcoms. Whether you're writing for a live audience or a single-cam mockumentary, remember it's all about the situation and the characters who never quite learn their lesson. We hope you also enjoyed part 6 of our adventure story, The Mystery of St. Augustine. There are 4 more parts and it's starting to pick up and get even more exciting. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave us a review. Until next time, keep the cameras rolling and the jokes landing. And as always, this podcast would not be possible without the hard work and support of our international student production team.
All music and sound effects are courtesy of Pixabay.com, a vibrant community of creatives sharing copyright-free images, videos, and music.
And we are signing off until next time. We are Students Incorporated, because your voice matters.